guys, and welcome to a commentary battle on Napoleon Total War, and this is actually a battle that I don't know how it's going to progress. Elite sent me this replay, so I'm kind of clueless as to how things are going to unfold or who's going to be the winner, but just to point out, Elite is going to be playing as Spain, and Just the Tip is going to be the middle faction playing as Sweden, and there's another player who I'm not familiar with called Jacked on the left over here. But the first thing that you're going to notice is that Elite has brought what seems to be a division worth of infantry and cavalry right to the rear of the French on this flank, and he seems to be completely unaware by this. So the French player is going to keep on advancing, thinking that he's basically going to be going up against a vulnerable Sweden that's making a crossing over the river over there. Little does he know that there's an entire Spanish division of guerrilleros coming right up behind him. I think that was a round shot that went over these Husares de Valpines, and that was a friendly round shot, I think. I'm not sure. You can see that there's kind of an envelopment brewing over here between the Spanish guerrillas and Jacks over here on this left flank. Pretty much everywhere else it's going to be quite stale, as normally battles on Dresden are. Over here there's nothing going on. In the middle there's very little going on, but over here you can see that of course the French howitzers were the first to go. The very first victim of the Spanish guerrillas charge. You can see from right, rear and center they're getting charged by cavalry, Spanish and Swedish. So oh my god, a terrible beginning for France over here. His French general killed and completely decimated. He lost his general in the beginning phase of the battle. His artillery, his experimental howitzers, completely quashed. Most of his infantry caught in a terrible pincer, and he did manage to fight them off, but he took quite severe casualties. And these are Guard seamen. These are not easy troops to actually bring along. They're quite expensive, I believe. And he's barely formed up. So he's getting quite a few volleys from militia units, for goodness sake. Mind you, Swedish militia look cool. That doesn't mean to say they're any better than other crappy militia, but at least they have the looks going. Look at those yellow feathers right on top of their top hats. Absolutely wonderful. Finally, he's going to reform. But the problem is, most of the Spanish guerrillas are yet to come, and you can see that he's brought... Spain is just such a terribly effective unit for guerrilla tactics, because you can see you can bring a mix of regular husares as well as some, what are these? Rifled infantry, carbine cavalry. So these guys, they're actually equipped with carbines the same way that chasseurs de cheval are. Not to mention lancers, which they already used. And then you have excellent light infantry, which is upgraded, by the way, which is so fucking unfair. I mean, these guys are deadly now. And then, even as a guerrilla unit, you have the Voluntaris de Coruna. And these guys have been upgraded up the wazoo. Look at that. So, a terribly effective Spanish force right in the rear still. And he's going to try and intercept him with Garde Chasseurs de Cheval. And he does take some minor casualties, only 5 people, but he charges right past them, and he's smart. He's going right for this vulnerable middle, which is formed of nothing of chasseurs. There aren't any lines in the rear or even in the front to protect these guys from a cavalry charge, and that was brutal. That was terrible. I think we can safely say that that's going to be the end of that brigade of chasseurs. And over here, these guys have been put into square. This isn't This isn't ideal. And those guard chasses of Cheval, they were completely swamped. I mean, you can see the morale is actually excellent for them to hold in, even while there's only 8 out of 45 men left, but that was done. These guys are going to be outranged. I'm not sure why on earth he would put his old guard here, basically as a meat shield to absorb fire from the Terradors, but these guys are badly outranged, by the way. They just can't return fire. And pretty soon you're going to see these guys are going to open up on the old guard. By far the most valuable infantry unit any nation can bring. There are 2 units of old guard actually. The one was hiding in these marshes. But it seems he's going to realize that these guys far outrange him, so he's going to withdraw a little bit. And the Voluntaires de Coruna are just giving off a beautiful volley against those poor Polish legion. Caught up in a square. And still the Cantadores Voluntaires de Madrid, they're still in the fight, completely disrupting and messing up the French lines over here. They finally do get put out of the fight, but by God, do they do a lot of damage. You can see the encirclement has actually kind of worked pretty well. You can see all these light red icons going into the rear. Those are routing units. One actually came back, one Chasseurs regiment. Pretty depleted though, it's not going to be that effective. And actually Elite seems to have flank marched most of his corps onto this side. And there seems to be a crossing by the Russians. He's seen that Elite has actually taken most of his corps to the complete opposite side of the battle, and he's going to say, well, he's weakened his flank, so I'm about to make a crossing. I'm not sure whether he's doing it that well. I think he's using this brigade of Opolcheny, which are Russian militia, to basically soak up the fire and the concentrated volleys from these light infantry, just to give his main body enough room to maneuver, which consists of a large brigade of musketeers, 3 regiments. Mind you, the Opolcheny have terrible formations here. You can see they're overlapping by over half, and it's just a terrible formation that he's come up against. I wonder if the militia are still in the fight. Well, one unit is. I'm not sure whether the original militia unit is still fighting. I'm not sure. I think it was routed, to be honest. No, that's... Let me see. I'm trying to track it down by using this, the icons, the flashing blue icons. It's supposed to be here. Oh, yes. This is what little remains of that. Oh my God, 2 out of 120. So out of an entire regiment of 120 men, only 2 people survived. For goodness sake, that's horrendous. And here we hear the cheer of a charge, I think. So the line infantry are going to go in. They're fresh. That means they're going to be quite effective. And they're going to go in for a bayonet charge against the Guard seamen. Oh God, that's going to be terrible. But the Guard seamen, they're fresh themselves, so it's not going to be that effective of a charge. And you can see, yeah, the Guard seamen see them off pretty well. But here comes the main thrust of the Allied effort, and that's 3 regiments of hussars just coming in, absolutely slaying anything that's in their path. Just look at these cavalrymen coming through. And it's just going to be terrible for these French who are trying to make a crossing to preserve a presence on this flank. I really have to say, this is excellent use by Elite of his guerrilla units. You can see that first he used it as a pincer movement on the French right, and then the French center, when they tried to cross over, he completely blocked their only path onto this side. There are some rising ground all around this fording across the river, and he's taken up an excellent position over here. Obviously 3 units can't hold off against an entire corps, but he's taken enough time so the Swedish corps can actually come up and aid him. This is excellent use of both his guerrilla units as well as his actual regular units. You can see those hussars just pushing in on those chasseurs and the fusiliers, not allowing anyone the time to actually form into square to ward them off. It's just a brutal way for France to actually make a crossing there.
Sir! Sir! Our general is under attack!
I think you can see some... yeah, a brigade of dragoons coming in to help the French in the center. It's not going to be... oh god. It's just going to be a cavalry melee. It's very hard to see what's going on. But here you can see that he's broken off from that engagement and he's going after the old guard. Doing quite a bit of damage as well. Even losing 10 men in the old guard is too much. You can see that he's having some success in pushing back the Spanish over here. But the Spanish themselves, they're quite well in holding off and containing the Russian assault. You can see that he basically forced the musketeers here into square, and just one unit of fusiliers is doing quite a bit of damage to both of these guys. So they've ceded the forested area and they've pulled back, but it seems now that the Russians have suffered too many casualties and there's going to be quite a decisive counterattack.
Our men are running.
So this flank is going to crumble. However, he is sending up a fresh unit of dragoons. You can see them coming out. They're definitely going for a charge. And having routed those guys, he has no problem or qualms in going into square to forward these guys off. And these guys are still in squares. I'm not sure why, but that was quite a dangerous charge by Francisco Castanos. But it was well worth it. You can see these two very depleted musketeer regiments. I'm not sure why he's withdrawing his dragoons. He actually had a very good chance of keeping these guys in square. But it seems like he's happy to maybe withdraw his dragoons entirely from this peninsula, which doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. But you can see the morale of the musketeers over here is faltering, and yeah, he is going for a withdrawal. So overall, it was actually quite a decisive counterattack that we saw over there fermenting, and now, yeah, the Russians are completely withdrawing from this peninsula. Over on this flank, it seems France, through quite a bloody mess and contest, actually managed to push over. But boy, did they pay the price. And now, even now, these columns of Old Guard, they're coming under terrible fire from these Swedish howitzers. Excellent use by those. And the other half of the French corps, I mean, what am I talking about? The Spanish corps is crossing over. And they're absolutely fresh. They've just been walking over steadily. And what you see over here is nothing but the remnants of the original French position over here. You saw some of them basically rallying on this side of the map. And there's no chance, though. All of these units have already been routed at least once, so it's not going to be too much of a hassle to get them to rout again. And you can see the morale. The morale is quite dangerously low. And this guy just routed. This guy is just seconds away from routing, and so is this Chasseurs regiment. And yeah, that's the end of that French corps entirely. Mind you, this French player, he's anything but a dummy. You can see that he's fanning out his lines. He's not going to let himself get easily outflanked by that Swedish contingent over here. But really, there's little hope for him, especially since there's this bloody howitzer regiment over here, as well as a fresh detachment of Spanish troops over here, containing a brigade of Walloon Guards, so quite elite units, the best infantry units available to Spain. So I really don't, how should I say, I really don't, what is the word I'm looking for? I really don't envy his position right now. His ally has been destroyed and he's barely holding on. In the center, if he didn't have this town hall, then he couldn't so easily just abandon this section and go over to the right. I'm not sure what the Dragoons here are planning, but it seems like they're giving the cheer for an onslaught. I think these guys are going into line though. Yeah. As in square, sorry. Yep. Terrible charge. And it's quite a forested and heavily vegetated area, as you can see. This is not the place where you want to charge in cavalry. So, a terrible waste of those Dragoons who are getting fire not from the square itself, but also from Jaegers and line infantry, all ensconced on the top of that ridge over there. So, a terrible waste actually. Those Russian Dragoons, they were quite good troops, but that's the end of that. Over here there seems to be a second attempt by the Russians to take over this peninsula. I'm not sure why. It's abundantly clear that he just won't be able to win this on the left. Over here he's quite adequately guarding the center. Mind you, over here he's going to be outranged pretty soon by the Jaegers and the Swedish troops. And here on the left, you can see that he's actually getting shot to bits by the howitzers, and he's also losing his left flank. His left flank is starting to weaken. And that's actually, grand tactically speaking, that's not something to be scoffed at. You can see that he's losing his link to that mainland in the center. If the Swedish advance and cut him off from that section, then he's basically isolated the mainstay of his army from, well, not his army, his corps from the mainland. And he's easily going to get destroyed. I mean, with artillery support, with massive supremacy in terms of the light infantry battle, and fresh troops, these guys don't stand a chance against them. You can see the Spanish Fusiliers going in on the front, the Cazadores also coming in. These poor old guard, they haven't really fought in any meaningful sense, and they're already heavily depleted. These guys did go into square though, so that was an excellent feint by his cuirassiers. Just force these lifeguard of foot into square, just ready them up for a devastating volley by the old guard. So excellent work by the French player. The French player it's not stupid. I mean, he's doing his best, and he's holding up against terrible odds. Over on this side, predictably, it's not going in the Russians' favor. You can see these guys getting fired. I'm not sure why these guys are not firing. Okay, finally they're going to fire. And I think that's the sound of, yeah, Russian Dragoons coming in. They are getting shot to bits though. Are they going to go into square? It seems like they are. But the problem is the Russians just don't have the infantry presence to actually take advantage of these squares. So it's kind of in vain. And it's only a matter of time. Mind you, he is doing an excellent job of putting these guys into square. But Elite is actually paying attention. He's making sure his Spanish troops reform into line as soon as the threat from the cavalry is over. Even these guys go into square, so these guys come back. I think he finally got the central line infantry out of square. It's really hard to see what's going on. The trees are quite densely packed over here. Quite a beautiful place though. I mean, lovely for a picnic. You can see quite probably lovers used to take these rowing boats out in here, you know. probably have a shag somewhere around here. But now it's mayhem. It's death. It's destruction. People are making war, not love. And I think actually the Russian dragoons, oh my god, these guys really deserve credit. They actually managed to rout the Spanish right on this peninsula. And it seems Russia actually might be able to win this. And here comes the general staff. They flank the Fusiliers on the left. I actually think... God. This is a perfect example of cavalry breaking the flanks and coming in to help the center with infantry pushing from the front. Excellent use of troops. I really didn't think he would be able to win this, but God, he pulled this around. He pulled this around. He has barely any troops left, but he's managed to win this. So quite a turnaround for Russia on this flank. Excellent use of his dragoons. Barely any of them left, 13 out of 45, but these 13 men are absolute heroes. If it wasn't for these dragoons, then there was absolutely no chance of Spain being defeated over here. And yeah, Castanos, he's going to be a little bit of a coward and bug out of there. I don't blame him, to be honest. It would be funny if any of these guys actually stopped routing and came back. I don't think it's likely, however. Over here, of course, we're seeing the town hall get blasted to bits, probably by the Swedish howitzers over here. Swedish howitzers and another, I see another. I thought I saw round shot artillery going in there. Not sure where it is though. Of course, it's here. It's here. The Swedish 12-pounders, and that's probably just the tips. Howitzers over there.
Now they must break.
Where? Where? Oh my god. Meanwhile, were we having fun on the peninsula over here? There was just a slow degradation of the French on this side. Which is no surprise, really. They were just so heavily outnumbered. They couldn't have done anything, really. You can see these Fusiliers. They're far outnumbering this poor old guard regiment. There's absolutely no way they can win. And especially with life guard of foot and line infantry from Sweden coming in on their right flank, this is hopeless. And even the old guard rout. Poor guys. And as soon as they rout, yeah, the Spanish and Swedish units, they peel off and they start making the crossing. There are absolutely no troops to guard against this crossing. I think these guys are exiting that building. They know it's a lost cause. You can see just how devastated it is. I mean, it's going to collapse any moment now. But over here, that successful Spanish raiding party is going to come up against fresh, and I mean fresh units of Swedish infantry just guarding the flank. And that must be disheartening. To have such a terrible struggle for this patch of land and kill so many Spanish people and win against all the odds and then come up against a very fresh detachment of elite Swedish corps. I mean, that's just unfair, to be honest. I think these guys are actually hidden. Yeah, they're hiding in the grass. These guys are not. And over here we have the Jaegers. So this is anything but ideal for the Russians. I don't think they're going to win. They worked miracles over here, but over here I don't think much is going to happen. You can quite clearly see that the masses of Swedish and Spanish infantry are just making the crossing over here. These musketeers are trying to hold them. They're in quite a good position. They can't really get flanked from their right. Their right is kind of like ensconced on this little building over here, and their left is also ensconced on this complex over here. So they're in quite a good position to defend, but it's just the overwhelming numbers.
We have killed their general, sir. Now they must break.
Where? Oh yeah. It seems he didn't actually see those lifeguard afoot who were just hidden in plain view, and he just charged against the general, and he got a terrible volley from the lifeguard afoot, and that really just made these guys plummet in terms of their morale.
Glorious victory, sir, is soon to be
And it
yours.
seems Spain is making the crossing. It's kind of out of desperation more than anything else. And those experimental howitzers over here, I'm not sure how much of an impact they've had. It says they're not in combat. Oh well, now it says they're winning slightly, but I don't think they've had much of an impact. Unlike the, what are these guys? 7-pounder howitzers, they actually gained a chevron in this battle. That's how much experience they've gathered from killing people. And you can see the... Oh my god. These poor Russian musketeers, they're just melting away. They can't contain the onslaught of so many. And they're coming under artillery fire from their left, their front, their right, and pretty soon their rear. They're going to be encircled, so I'm not even sure why this unit is holding on. Not a good idea, really, charging in Jaegers. Musketeers. So it's pretty much the end. These are just the closing moments for the Russian corps. 1, 2, 3 units to go, really. Well, 4 units, but it seems he's actually going to win. So the crossing in the center was actually successful in its first stage, you could see. These line infantry were quite soundly defeated. And over here, it's because he's fresh. His men are charging in fresh, and he's lost quite a bit, but this time he's going up against a very fully stacked line infantry, and yeah, he's just not even going to be able to make it to the line. So that's pretty much the end. The howitzers rout by themselves over there on the promontory. And you could see the losses and the kills. The kills for Spain were enormous. 1,500, over 1,500. And over here you can see that the paper bot, he actually did pretty well in terms of kills. And losses, of course, is going to be astronomical for him. But overall, a very interesting map. And a very interesting battle, especially by the Spanish, as well as the Russians over here. What they pulled off in this little peninsula over here, it was quite impressive. Anyway, guys, if you like that, go ahead and subscribe to keep up with the upcoming videos. Have a nice day.
How stands the glass around? For shame ye take no care, me boys. How stands the glass around? Let mirth and wine abound. The trumpets sound.